Hi and welcome to this video. I'm Phil, I'm one of the co-founders here at AttackForge. And in this video, we're going to show you our latest integration with HackerOne. The purpose of this integration is to make it easy for a researcher to submit a report in HackerOne and to have that show as a vulnerability in AttackForge in real time. Now this integration is also available on our support site, so you can follow all of the areas that we're going to cover shortly from there as well. And separately, if you head over to our GitHub repository, you'll find that an example of this exact flow is going to be available that you can leverage and import to make it very quick and easy to get started. So let's take a look at this integration in action. So the first thing we're going to do is open up the HackerOne portal. And what we can see here is a new program that's been set up for AttackForge as a bug bounty program. Now let's pretend we're a researcher. So we found an issue and we want to submit that. So we're going to click on Submit Report. And here we should see a very sort of familiar form for a lot of people who have worked with HackerOne. So let's pretend we found a reflected XSS. So we'll go ahead and select an existing weakness. And we'll go through and just apply a CVSS baseline score. And so now let's give the submission a title. So we'll go ahead in there and create a title and paste that in. And now it's asking for a description. So, steps to reproduce, any supporting information to help the engineering teams know how to fix this problem. And we'll also add an impact as well. So that's going to help add a bit of weight to this particular finding for the security team to consider. So let's go in and submit that report. Now, as that's been submitted, let's jump into AttackForge. And we have here a bug bounty project that we've set up in AttackForge. And we can see that a new finding has just come across. And if we open up that finding, we'll see that we now have a new vulnerability in AttackForge. It has that information that's come across. It has been enriched to have some extra information here to make it easier for the security teams to understand a bit more context for this type of vulnerability. We can see that as it's entered AttackForge, other automations have kicked off to create Azure DevOps, ServiceNow, and Jira tickets. We've also captured that information from HackerOne, so we can always go and visit it in that portal as well. And importantly, the steps to reproduce and key information that the engineering team's going to need is also captured here in the POC. Cool. So let's dive in a little bit deeper to see how this integration is happening behind the scenes. So for that, we're going to open up the AttackForge Flows module. Now, for anyone who hasn't worked with Flows yet, Flow is a module for automations and integrations. So you can think of it to be very similar to Microsoft's Power Automate type module. You can build all different types of automations and integrations from here within AttackForge. We can see at the top of the list, I have one here, create a vuln from a HackerOne report. So that's the one that we've just used for this automation. So let's pop open the README and just get a bit more background into what's happening here. So again, the purpose of this flow is to create a new vulnerability in AttackForge when there's a new report created in HackerOne. So as we could see moments ago, step one, the researcher creates a new report on HackerOne. So that part we've already done. And what happens from there is a webhook gets sent to AttackForge. Now, this particular flow is handling that webhook, and we're going to have a look in a bit more detail at the code behind the scenes of how this particular flow has been set up to handle that interaction. But what happens, the webhook gets sent to AttackForge via a trigger URL, and then AttackForge will verify that the signature using the shared secret between HackerOne and AttackForge is valid. So that way we can confirm that the message is originating from HackerOne. So that's more there just for a sort of security check. Now the payload from HackerOne is quite detailed, but there's some other data that we want to take advantage of. So for that reason, we can use that initial webhook to then extract the ID and retrieve more data from HackerOne's REST API. So we'll take a look at that in a moment as well. But that particular API that we're leveraging is this one, which is the Get Report API. So you can see there's quite a lot of data available when we call this API. And in particular, some of this information we definitely want to take advantage of to put inside of AttackForge as well. So separately, when it comes to enriching the vulnerability with this extra information, if you recall to when we were creating the submission, we selected a CWE. Now, MITRE has an amazing REST API that we can leverage that allows us to query MITRE's catalog of CWEs to then retrieve this information as it's needed. So this is another step in our automation to really just make it easier for the security teams to have more context about this category and class of vulnerability. Now, the webhooks themselves can be configured within the HackerOne program settings. So when you set up your webhook in HackerOne for this automation, you will need to include a name and a payload URL. Now, the payload URL is available when we create the flow. So here we can see there's what we call a trigger URL. You can think of this as a unique URL to identify this flow in AttackForge. So this is how external systems, external scripts can interact, post data to AttackForge, and AttackForge can receive it. So it acts more or less like your own custom API endpoint. So we can then trigger all of the following activities from there. So this URL is what you would put into the payload URL. Now, we do recommend adding a secret. The secret can be anything that is going to be used there to create a HMAC for this particular payload. So the intention there is that it will be hashed, and then we can compare the hash with the shared secret on the AttackForge side, just to make sure that if they align, where we know that the sender used the right secret. So we're confident that it's come from HackerOne. Now, because HackerOne doesn't support custom headers, in AttackForge you can configure custom headers for authentication. So that's another way to help add a layer of authentication to your triggers in AttackForge. However, because it's not supported in HackerOne, then we can leverage this for another level of security. So when it comes to the events, here we can see a list of events that HackerOne include as options to enable webhooks for. The one that we're interested in is this one, when a hacker submits a report. So we just want to make sure that one is enabled when we create this webhook. So coming back into AttackForge, we'll see that there's also an API token that we will need in order to communicate with the REST API on HackerOne. Now you can go in and create that again within the HackerOne platform. There's a section there where you can create API tokens, and we can see an example of a token that I've created here for the purpose of this integration. So assuming you've set up your webhook and set up your API token, now we can dive into configuring in AttackForge. So let's take a look at the example. Let's take a look at the logs of the example that just ran a few moments ago when we ran through that. So here we can see, firstly, the information that had been sent to AttackForge from HackerOne. So this is the body of the payload that HackerOne sent to AttackForge. So we can see there's information here about what the activity type was, information about the report itself, relationships, severity, attachments, and that's mostly it there. So we can see that this data is, is still quite rich, but it's still not as much data as we would like, which is available via the REST API. So from here, what we're actually doing is a HTTP request. So here we can see we've made a HTTP request using the ID from that report. And we can see that the responses come back with much more information that we're going to leverage for this particular submission. So we can then create the vulnerability in AttackForge with as much information as possible. Now the next step is, now that we have the data from HackerOne for the report, the next step is to enrich it with CWE data. So we can see the second action in our flow is to then make a request to the HackerOne, to the CWE API. So here we can see we're leveraging again this CWE REST API to retrieve some information for that particular weakness, and we can see here the body that is coming back from that REST API, and we can see we have quite a lot of information to do with this particular weakness for this reflected cross-site scripting that was identified. So there's probably more information than we would need, but having more provides a lot of options. So you can really sort of leverage as much of this information as you want to then put into AttackForge. So the last step is to create the vulnerability. So we can see in this final action, we are making a request to AttackForge to then register the vulnerability, and we can see all of this key information that we're using to create the vulnerability, and that's really the end of this particular automation. So let's actually dive a little bit deeper now into the code and how we've configured this particular automation. So from here, I'm going to click on Edit, and what we'll notice, the first thing is that we're using a HTTP trigger type. Now, a HTTP trigger type is really designed for this purpose, where we can create a custom API endpoint effectively. So we can say that this is going to be an endpoint that's available or listening for post-based HTTP requests. It's available at this particular URL. And from here, we could set up authentication. Now, again, HackerOne doesn't support authentication, but if you had other use cases that just to keep in mind, you can set this up as well. And from here, you can specify custom header to use for that authentication. Now, let's take a look at that first action, and that first action is that request to go to retrieve the report submission from HackerOne. So we can see here the first part of that logic that we're doing is we're validating the HMAC that's coming from the HackerOne header. So when HackerOne makes its webhook submission to AttackForge, it will supply a header called XH1 signature. So we want to take that signature and we want to then apply our own secret. So that secret you can configure as a secret in AttackForge. So you can go in, set up all your secrets. And again, secrets can belong to the flow. They can belong to users as well if you need to share your secrets more easily or manage them centrally. So what we're doing is we're using that secret, and this is the secret that was configured here. So in AttackForge, we want to copy that secret and enter it in, so we can refer to the same secret. Now, what we're doing is we're then leveraging one of these, one of the functions we have in AttackForge to create a HMAC, and we're passing in the entire payload that's coming from HackerOne's webhook request, and we're combining our secret, and because HackerOne is using SHA-256, we're setting it to match that same algorithm as well as the encoding there in base 16. So what we're doing is we're creating this HMAC using all of that supplied information, converting it to lowercase, and then we're doing a check here to see whether the signature in this case is not equal to the payload. So this is a condition where it's an invalid HMAC. So we know that the request itself didn't originate from HackerOne, and we can ignore it. However, if they are valid, we'll continue on through the flow. And here we can see that we're in particular looking for the report ID to come from that data. So that report ID is that information that's coming in the webhook, and I'll just quickly jump out and we can have a look at that one again. So here's an example where within the data that was sent to us, here we go. What we're looking for is data, report ID. So this is the ID that we want to use in the request to the REST API to fetch the report information from HackerOne. So let's go back to flow. So now that our request is being submitted, we can see here that's the URL. Now we're setting it in the script because it is dynamic, because we don't know what this is going to be ahead of time. We're setting it here in our script. Otherwise, if it was static, we could always set it statically within our configuration for this action. So the request will then go to HackerOne's REST API to retrieve that information. It will come back via the response. And here within the response, we can do some validation just to check that everything's there that we expect. Importantly, we're looking for this data to come back. So what does the data have? That's going to be this information. So we're testing that this object exists. So then we can be sure that we've got that information. So now that we have that report submission from HackerOne, we can go to the next action. Now the next action here we can see in the code, it's checking whether a CWE was supplied as part of that information coming from HackerOne. So we can see, sort of following the nesting here, there's a particular property we're looking for that's part of the weakness, which is the external ID, and we want to just make sure that that is actually coming across as a CWE. So again, I'll show you an example of that one, and let's open up flow again and have a look at the logs that were coming across. So so if we have a look at the response from HackerOne's REST API, we'll see that we are looking for this one, weakness and external ID, which we can see is a CWE with a value. Now, because MITRE's API is looking for just the number itself, that's where here in AttackForge we need to do a replace to remove the prefix there for CWE with the dash. And now that we know if we have the CWE, we can proceed to make a request to MITRE's API And again, because this is dynamic, we're appending the ID to the end of that URL. If there was no CWE, it's not a problem. We can still continue with the automation and just leverage what other information we have from HackerOne to create the vulnerability itself. So this is really just for extra information that we might want to include. Now you can see that we're passing along data. Data is our way of communicating information from the request to the response and from action to action. So here we can see we're slowly building up our data to have the context that we need. And if we open up the response from CWE, we'll see here that as we're building up and identifying that that the weakness has been found, we're going to add that to our data. So now we have the HackerOne report and we have data about the CWE as well. So the information that we're expecting to see is again this information here, which includes really useful information, particularly around those descriptions, recommendations, and any other information there as well that you might want to use for custom scoring or custom prioritization. Okay, so the last step here in this flow is to make a post request to AttackForge's API to create a vulnerability. So what does the vulnerability look like? Well, let's take a look at how we can leverage all of this data. So we know that we have the report and we may have the CWE depending on whether the researcher supplied that or not. But in any case, even just with the report alone, we want to build up a payload that we're going to use to create a vulnerability in AttackForge. So here we can see we have a function called build request body. And if we look a bit further down, we can see what build request body actually does. So it takes in a report and a CWE, and from there it starts building up a vulnerability that's going to be compatible with AttackForge's REST API to create a new vulnerability. So some of this information is already known ahead of time, so we can seed that data in the original initial vulnerability object. Things like the project ID, we know which project this is going to. In this case, it's our sort of HackerOne bug bounty project, so we can go ahead and include that ID directly into the vulnerability. Now, HackerOne doesn't specify a field unless leveraging custom fields for affected asset name. So at the moment, I'm just referencing the program itself. However, when you set up your program in HackerOne, and if you leverage custom fields, you could potentially map that to a separate field which has some URL or some other information to do with the asset itself. We're setting it to an informational by default, and then we can go through and adjust the priority as we go. And similarly here, we don't know anything about the vulnerability just yet, but that's going to be added very shortly. So now the first thing we're doing, we're checking, do we have a CWE? And if so, let's start populating some data. So we're pulling out the ID, the CWE name, and we're taking advantage of the description and extended description as well. You'll notice that there is another function there called format vuln info, and that's another function we've declared a little bit later in this script. Which really just helps doing some replacements. So because in AttackForge we leverage rich text and HTML for representing vulnerabilities and styling them nicely. So we're just doing some conversions there for new line characters to line breaks. So we're here, we've got the extended description, the background details, which we're now adding to the attack scenario, the mitigations or potential mitigations, as well as some other information here that we're going to use from HackerOne to formulate the steps to reproduce. So now we've got the POC capture there as well. We can see here that if we don't have a CWE, that's okay. We can still add some information directly from the report from HackerOne as well. Here what we're doing is we're adding some custom fields. So we want to capture the ID of the HackerOne report. The benefit there is to make it easier to know exactly what the ID was in case we need to correlate the two, or for potential future flows that may involve initiating retests or syncing or any other future communications there. And similar with the report URL, so we can see we're building that up and making that available as well inside of AttackForge. Now this part we're doing scoring. So here we can see that HackerOne does have severity ratings, and they do align directly with AttackForge's critical, high, medium, low informational. So here we're just doing a direct mapping of that to AttackForge. And separately, we're adding CVSS scores as well. So HackerOne does, again, if the researcher scores it and they use CVSS, we can take advantage of that and add that in as well. So that's pretty much it. Once that body's been built up, we're making a request to AttackForge. And again, that's going to go to the REST API. That is documented on our support site, but there is again also information inside the app, and here we're looking at create vulnerability API, which is this one. So this is the API that we're leveraging in this example to create a vulnerability in AttackForge. So I hope this video has been useful. So if you are building a HackerOne integration, please let us know. We'd love to sort of hear about all the different types of integrations that our customers are building with flows. And hope you enjoy this video. There's going to be some follow-up videos which are going to be looking at some of those other interactions around initiating retests and communicating back out to HackerOne to change statuses, interact with the report as well. So we'll be building across a few other different types of workflows. Thank you very much, and hope you enjoyed this video.